This girl Zheng Zi was going to the movies with the boy named Shang on a date, but not long after, the two of them started arguing and fighting. It turned out that their group needed a topic to discuss about love at school. Everyone had sent the two of them to try dating to get more research materials, but this seemed impossible because the two of them had been arguing with each other since childhood. This group of friends had been close friends since childhood. They grew up together in the Shuday apartment building. First was Qiao, who had loved to eat since childhood. Next was Xiao, who was Qiao's younger sister and was a good student but very fierce. Next was Zui, also a good student. He was also known as the group's peacemaker. As for Zhengji, she was the girl who made the most jokes. Last was Shang, who was always arrogant and made Zhengzi angry. When the Shuday apartment building was upgraded, everyone was moved to a new place. Moving was supposed to be a happy event, but Zhengzi and her father had bitter faces. The reason was that after moving, the family's savings were almost exhausted, so Zhengzi's mother made a savings plan for the whole family, which reduced the monthly allowance by half. Zhengzi thought that saving was something to be supported. However, she wanted to buy a new bicycle because her old one was broken, but her mother refused. Zhengzi was miserable because she didn't have enough money to change her bike. But while cleaning the old house with her friends, she accidentally found an envelope of money that someone had hidden. After counting it, there was a total of 800 yuan, a large sum of money. Zhengzi thought about who the money belonged to. She thought that her father did not have the guts to hide money, and even if he did, he would only put it in his clothes or socks, at most about 20 yuan. Therefore, she concluded that the 800 yuan was definitely hidden by her mother. However, Qiao, who was by her side, advised her not to act rashly, and that it was better to secretly test it out to find out the truth. So, Zhengzi began a series of observations. She noticed that straightforward people often dared to look straight into other people's eyes, but when her mother looked at her, she would avoid it. Zhengzi also saw her mother searching for something in the house. To verify, she tried asking a question. When her father thought Zhengzi had discovered that he had hidden the wine, he immediately gave her half. But when Zhengzi tried the same with her mother, she coldly replied that she was not her biological child and told Zhengzi to go find her biological mother if she had time. Zhengzi was stunned by this answer, and her father was equally surprised. After a series of tests, she was even more certain that the money belonged to her mother. Zhengzi was wondering whether she should return it or not. At that moment, her mother passed by and suddenly scolded her, telling her to go home immediately. Not understanding the reason for the scolding, Zhengzi decided to make her mother lose the money forever. She hid the envelope of money in the lampshade in her room and smugly thought that she had found a safe hiding place. But unexpectedly, when her mother called Zhengzi to dinner and turned on the lights, Zhengzi suddenly realized that it was a place that was too easy to be discovered. She immediately told her mother to go out first, then quickly hid the envelope behind the doll. Zhengzi thought that the most dangerous place would be the safest place. However, the next day, her cousin who came to visit discovered the doll. Since her mother was about to give the doll to her cousin, Zhengzi immediately kept it, but at the same time, she was forced to give up her other dolls. With no other choice, Zhengzi had to find another hiding place. After wandering around the house, she finally decided to hide the money in the ceiling fan. She thought that money was not easy to earn, so it would be safer to put it in a high place. However, not long after, Zhengzi saw her father anxiously searching for something. When she asked, she finally discovered that the money was actually her father's. It was the hard-earned money he had saved to buy her a new bicycle. The two of them happily shared their joy, but at that moment, their mother and an aunt came to visit. Seeing the aunt sweating, mother immediately told Zhengzi to turn on the fan. Unfortunately, the money had been hidden not long ago, so it was quickly discovered. Zhengzi's mother, who was always stingy and frugal with electricity to the point of not allowing the fan to be turned on normal days, suddenly wanted to turn on the fan when her aunt came to visit. Although she did not show any expression on her face, she did not know that Zhengzi had taken her father's money and hidden it above the fan. At this time, the father and son made up all kinds of excuses to avoid turning on the fan. However, seeing their hesitation, Zhengzi's mother stepped forward and turned it on herself. As a result, as soon as the fan started, money fell from above. All the money flew away, along with Zhengzi's dream of a new bicycle. The next day, listening to Zhengzi's mother, her husband was forced to use the remaining money to buy a bottle of good wine as a gift for the leader. He complained that the money he had worked hard to save was spent on the leader in the end. Later, Zhengzi's father happened to see Zhengzi passing by with the old bicycle. Seeing this scene, Zhengzi's father quietly made a decision in his heart. At night, when Zhengzi finished her work, the bicycle chain suddenly broke in the middle of the road. With no other choice, bus, she had to walk. Looking at the others leisurely cycling, Zhengzi suddenly felt jealous. But as she turned the corner, she suddenly saw her father standing there with a new bicycle. When the bicycle appeared in front of her, Zhengzi's father happily handed it to his daughter. Zhengzi immediately tried the bike. At that moment, she looked at her father with tears in her eyes, tears falling continuously. She happily rode the new bike and asked her father where he had gotten the money to buy it. Since the money to buy the bicycle had been confiscated, Zhengzi's father boasted that he had many solutions. He confessed that he had not bought wine for the leader, but instead had given him a book on how to cook wine. As a result, he was scolded by Zhengzi's mother. However, he still proudly explained that giving a book on how to cook wine is better than giving wine, because it will help the leader save money on buying wine in the future. Zhengzi's mother angrily told Zhengzi that this bicycle must be used for 15 years. Zhengzi immediately replied that she could ride it for the rest of her life. The next day, Zhengzi excitedly showed off her new bike in front of Shang. Even if Shang was just taking out the trash, she would wait for him to go to the next neighborhood so she could have an excuse to show off the bike. On the way, she met Mr. Lin. He reminded her that new bikes were very easy to steal, so Zhengzi had better buy a quality lock. However, Zhengzi chose to buy 3 cheap locks for only 10 yuan. Although Shang tried to dissuade her, she insisted on buying them. In the end, there were only 3 of these locks left in the store, and she took them all. She believed that 3 locks were safer than 1. As a result, Zhengzi still felt secure riding her beloved bicycle to the supermarket to buy things that night. Even the supermarket owner knew Zhengzi. Now, when she just left the supermarket after buying things, she was shocked to find that her bicycle had disappeared. Zhengzi was so worried that she cried and searched everywhere. Even though she had locked 3 locks, the bicycle was still gone. Meanwhile, Xiao had another worry. Her idol's concert was on her mother's birthday. This forced her to choose between 2 events. Xiao had bought a ticket to the concert, something she had long dreamed of. Xiao secretly hoped that she wouldn't have to go home tonight. However, she was still hesitant, not knowing whether she should tell her mother directly or not. Just then, Xiao spoke up first. He said that he had to compete on Friday night, so he wouldn't be able to go home to celebrate his mother's birthday. Hearing this, mother agreed, and also said that father and his younger sister could be with her. Xiao saw her mother's slightly lost expression and felt extremely embarrassed. She had no choice but to call Zui. Xiao wanted to see if she could change her ticket to Saturday. Zui promised to find a way to help her. Her mother's birthday was coming up soon. She had already prepared a birthday meal. She also texted Xiao to come home early after the match. As for Xiao, although she hadn't changed her ticket yet, she still hoped that she could go to the concert. Tonight, Xiao finally decided to tell her mother that she was going to see the show. She explained that she could see her mother every day, while her idols might only get to see them once a year. At that time, her father received a large order and could not come home for dinner. Her mother was a little sad. She had hoped to spend her birthday with her family this year, but she ended up sitting alone on the sofa. When she heard a knock on the door, she opened it and was surprised to see her mother standing there. The old woman was still holding the chicken soup she had loved since she was a child. The old mother looked at her child lovingly. She suddenly remembered that when a person becomes a parent, they always see themselves as a solid support for their child. However, they forget that they themselves were once a child loved by their parents. While she was sitting there waiting, Xiao was about to enter the concert venue, but at that moment, she suddenly decided to give up. Xiao thought that her idol would never know whether she was coming or not, so they wouldn't be sad. But for her mother, if she was absent on her birthday, the sadness would be real. So that night, Xiao returned home. She lied to her mother that the show had ended early, and she wanted to go home to have dinner with her mother. Then her father and brother also returned one by one. None of them forgot their mother's birthday. When she saw everyone returning one by one, she smiled happily. On the other side, Zhengzi was sad because she lost her bicycle. She sat alone on the side of the road crying. At this time, Shang called Zhengzi to invite her to go to the concert. Of course she agreed, because even if she lost her bike, she couldn't waste the precious ticket. Her heart was filled with both laughter and heartache. After the concert, Zhengzi discovered that her bike was not stolen. In fact, no one could see this little bike. On New Year's Eve, while Qiao was struggling with her homework, the other friends gathered together to watch a movie. Zui was especially concerned about Zhengzi and asked if she had finished her summer homework. Zhengzi insisted that she had, but no one believed her. To prove it, she handed over her workbook for Zui to check. The results showed that there were still some unfinished papers. Zhengzi wanted to ask everyone for help, but everyone made excuses and left. She had no choice but to ask Zui, who was always kind enough to help her. Unlike Zhengzi, who was taught by an expert, Xiao chose a different path. He cut out some pages from his workbook. When the homeroom teacher checked the next day, he immediately noticed that his workbook textbook was much thinner than the others. Fortunately, then, the teacher beside him called him to a meeting at that moment, so Qiao was saved. The school then held a debate competition. Zhengzi and Xiang both made it to the semi-finals, and ironically, they became rivals. Even during meals, the two of them kept fighting over a piece of meat, making the adults laugh. Seeing how enthusiastic the two were, everyone suggested that they practice before the match. After dinner, the mock debate was extremely tense. No one would give in, and at times they even shed tears and accused each other of personal attacks. The rehearsal ended in a heated atmosphere. However, the next day, the teacher unexpectedly announced that the competition schedule would be postponed because 5 other students withdrew. The organizers had to rearrange the schedule. What Zhengzi and Xiang did not expect was that from being opponents, they were paired as teammates. Their topic was paradoxical. Is early love harmful or beneficial? For two people who had never been in love, this seemed like a topic that would definitely cause them to fail. But in order to have a real example, Qiao suggested that the two of them could simulate a love affair to collect materials. Following the suggestion, Zhengzi tried to lean her head on Xiang's shoulder. However, apart from feeling awkward, she did not feel any heartbeat. Qiao observed and commented that the atmosphere was still not enough. He suggested that the two of them should go on a real date tomorrow. Maybe there would be a breakthrough. The next day, Zhengzi and Xiang officially began to experience their hypothetical love. The first time they went to the cinema, beside the couple in love, was all sweet ambiguity. However, the two of them started to fight over who could eat more popcorn. This argument gradually turned into a small battle, and then the two of them continued to the ice skating rink. At the ice skating rink, Xiang staggered on the sidelines, not daring to slip. Zhengzi lied to him that she would teach him, but in the end, after pulling him to the middle of the V rink, she left him alone. Finally, in the amusement park, when Zhengzi talked about Xiang's immodest behavior, he was so angry with Zhengzi that he decided to break up with her. After returning home and watching the scene of the two of them failing to date, Qiao thought that the original plan was fine. He commented that unsuccessful dating could help them find the feeling of their hearts again, so he gave the two another suggestion to imitate classic movie scenes to evoke emotions. They started with the classic romantic scene of sheltering from the rain, but the result was completely different. Zhengzi's shoes were a bit slippery, causing her to fall and pull down his pants. Then, in the sweet outdoor date scene, Zhengzi wore lenses and headphones. However, all the scenes failed. Qiao realized that they did not run, did not jump, did not have props. Therefore, they should recreate the inseparable scenes commonly seen in Korean dramas. Normally, such a failed date should end in a happy breakup. However, when talking about Xiang, he was afraid of Zhengzi. For her part, Zhengzi was also angry and affirmed that she no longer believed in any heartbeat. Later, when going to buy a drink at a convenience store, Zhengzi encountered an unexpected situation. When she was tiptoeing to get a bottle of water, someone behind her helped her take it down. The moment Zhengzi turned around and saw the tall, handsome figure in front of her, the girl's warm heart seemed to beat very fast. The next day, Zhengzi was washing her hair at home when the water suddenly stopped running. With no other choice, she went to Xiang's house to take a bath. As a result, when Xiang brought his older brother back home, he was surprised to see Zhengzi singing alone. At that time, Zhengzi also saw Ouyang with Xiang. She was extremely embarrassed when she realized that this was the male god she fell in love with at first sight that night. Later, Zhengzi knew from Xiang that Ouyang would be living with him in a house. In order to restore her image in Ouyang's heart, Zhengzi occasionally found excuses to go to Xiang's house, knocking on the door to create a sense of presence in front of Ouyang. However, Zhengzi's actions made Xiang mistakenly think that she liked him, so he went to his good friend Zui. Then Xiang told him what he saw and discussed how to reject Zhengzi. On the other side, Zhengzi went to find Xiao. She felt that she had successfully attracted Ouyang's attention and won his favor. Zhengzi decided to confess to Ouyang. However, Xiao, who was eavesdropping outside the door, misunderstood that Zhengzi wanted to confess to Xiang, so he immediately went to find Xiang and told him what he had just heard. So the two began to practice expressing their love. After the self-study session that night, Zhengzi was ready to confess by inviting her friends to eat barbecue, using it as an excuse for Xiang to invite her brother Ouyang out. However, the next day, Ouyang did not come. Zhengzi was therefore no longer in the mood to eat barbecue. At that moment, she suddenly saw Ouyang running out. Only then did she find out that Ouyang already had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend was extremely beautiful. Before she could confess, Zhengzi realized that her heart had failed, which made her very sad. At this moment, Xiang came over. As he watched Ouyang leave with his girlfriend, Zhengzi kept talking about them and praising them. Seeing this, Zhengzi then angrily returned to the table, even drinking 3 bottles of mineral water in a row. Everyone thought that Shang had rejected her confession, which broke her heart. The next day, Zhang Zi became like a different person. Her voice seemed to be decreasing, accompanied by a series of strange behaviors. Both Zui and Qiao thought that the reason must be Shang's rejection of Zhang Zi's feelings, so they thought that he should compensate Zhang Zi. Qiao offered to take Zhang Zi to the Yi amusement park, but he didn't want to spend his own money, so he thought of a way to benefit both parties. After experiencing a failed puppy love, Zhang Zi began to learn to love herself. Her originally carefree personality now deliberately pretended to be gentle, just because she heard Ouyang say that he liked gentleness. Shang couldn't bear to see Zhang Zi continue to go crazy over his brother, so he decided to take her to the amusement park himself. However, what Zhang Zi didn't expect was that Shang also called Ouyang and his girlfriend to join this trip. When the tour ended, Zhang Zi saw her secret crush, Ouyang, being sweet with his girlfriend, and her heart was filled with jealousy. On the way home, Shang and Zhang Zi talked about the same topic, but each had a different perspective. Zhang Zi then praised Ouyang as a very handsome, strong, tall and warm person. She said it in a calm and kind tone. Hearing this, Shang thought that she was praising him, so he quickly showed off and showed a happy face. However, after a while of chatting, he realized that the person Zhang Zi liked was actually his brother. That feeling made Shang immediately numb. Immediately after, Zhang Zi saw a 20 yuan bill lying on the side of the road. She wanted to pick it up, but Shang thought she was dying, so he pulled her back. Shang immediately persuaded Zhang Zi not to sacrifice herself for small things. 2. Thank Ouyang for taking her to the amusement park. Zhang Zi took out her small savings to buy a gift for him. However, her budget was really limited. In the end, Zhang Zi decided to knit a scarf herself to send to Ouyang. However, while sitting downstairs and concentrating on knitting the scarf, she accidentally injured her finger. Luckily, Shang was passing by and saw it. He thought that Zhang Zi could not handle it herself, so he quickly took a band-aid to bandage her wound. While bandaging, Shang did not forget to comfort and reassure her. After finishing the bandaging, Shang took Zhang Zi to the stairs and unexpectedly gave her a new bicycle. It turned out that this was the prize money from the debate competition. He did not use it to buy new sneakers, but to buy her a bicycle. Zhang Zi looked at the bicycle that Shang gave her. She was moved and thanked him with tears. In another development, two thugs were flirting with a girl. Xiao happened to be in the store and could not ignore it, so she stepped forward to stop them. As a result, the two thugs not only did not stop but also deliberately provoked them. Fortunately, Ouyang appeared in time and chased them away. On the 18th day after the midterm exams, Zhang Zi's pre-exam ritual syndrome relapsed. Shang saw Zhang Zi tidying up her things and stood aside to mock her. But when he wanted to see her homework, he couldn't understand it, making his mind explode. In the end, he was forced to ask his cousin to tutor him. However, Ouyang, who had long since graduated from high school, had forgotten the knowledge, causing his studies to not progress. So in the end, Zhu and Xiao had to take turns teaching everyone. After everyone went home, Xiao's mother decided to ask her daughter to enroll in an evening cram school. Seeing Xiao being both silly and happy, she became even more worried. On the other hand, Zhang Zi also began to develop her own study method. Instead of using traditional methods, she took out her Chinese exam paper and counted the good and bad scores. Zhang Zi then muttered to herself that if she could walk 100 steps home, she would be in the top 100 on the exam. However, after walking 99 steps, she still had a long way to go before she reached home. Just when Zhang Zi was in despair, Shang passed by. He immediately carried her back home with kindness, but Zhang Zi still hadn't given up on this luck-based way of studying. The next day, she continued to predict that if the first person she met on the stairs wore red, the exam would have a smooth start. But when she opened the door, what she saw was Shang in his school uniform. Zhang Zi still did not give up because she believed that Shang had other red spots. He was confused and pulled out his white t-shirt for Zhang Zi to check. Even his socks were white, but Zhang Zi was still undeterred. She even insisted on checking his underwear. The 7th day was also the last day of the midterm exam. Zhang Zi was depressed and could only think about who could save her from the exam. At this time, Qiao was standing by the window. He came to chat with her about the matter related to Shang. Then Qiao came up with a plan to help Zhang Zi prepare for the exam. So the three poor students, in order to pass the midterm exam, started a special study program to get high scores. Zhang Zi made an appointment with his friends to go to the library to study. Seeing Zhang Zi and Qiao gradually entering a state of concentration, Shang nodded in satisfaction. But when he went out to get some water, Shang returned and found that both of them had fallen asleep on the table. He immediately went to wake them up, then returned to his seat and looked at them sternly. However, even though they were awake, Zhang Zi and Qiao were still not very enthusiastic about studying. This left Shang completely helpless. useless. So the three of them decided to change their strategy and went to listen to a lecture by a famous teacher outside the school. As soon as they entered the classroom, they heard the veteran students sharing their outstanding achievements. After listening, Zhang Zi and Qiao were stunned for a moment. Ignoring Shang's dissuasion, the two of them immediately bought a set of winning secrets. They were confident that as long as they had this treasure, the upcoming exam would definitely go smoothly. Meanwhile, in another place, Xiao was on her way home when she suddenly encountered a robber. Fortunately, Ouyang appeared in time. He hugged Xiao so that she would not be scared, then gracefully took off his hat and put it on her head. Then he went to suppress the robber alone. Soon after, police arrived and arrested him. Xiao wanted to go home with Ouyang, and he seemed to be willing to take her home. However, she did not notice that Zui was always silently watching behind her. Every day, he patiently stood at the place where Xiao studied for the exam, waiting for her to finish class and silently following behind to protect her. But today, Zui accidentally had an accident while walking, and when he arrived at Xiao's place, he saw her scene. Her friends later came to comfort Xiao. Zhang Zi did not forget to show off the winning formula she had just bought. Zhang Zi felt that with this treasure, she could suddenly transform from a loser to a master. As a result, on the way to school the next day, Zhang Zi met a woman selling street food. She immediately recognized the woman as the businesswoman from the day before. So the group hurried to the lecture venue. Looking at the seal on the door, Shang looked at the stunned Zhang Zi and Qiao. As expected, they had failed the exam again. Zhang Zi and Shang sat helplessly on the sofa, both looking depressed. At this time, Qiao suggested that the group go to the amusement park on the weekend to relax. Unexpectedly, Zhang Zi and Shang expressed their determination. They decided to study hard and not participate in any entertainment activities in the future. Just then, Ouyang appeared and asked if they had time to go out on the weekend. Qiao covered his mouth before he could finish speaking. It turned out that Ouyang and his school were going to hold a Halloween dance this weekend. He wanted to bring some of them to attend. However, seeing that Zhang Zi and Shang were still depressed about failing their exams, everyone couldn't decide right away and thought that they should try and solve it first. After a few failed attempts, the group finally decided not to bring the two to the dance. However, Zhang Zi and Shang already knew about the Halloween dance. They really wanted to attend but were too embarrassed to ask directly because of their pride, so they started hinting to their friends. As a result, their friends were completely unaware of their intentions. So the two of them discussed how to go openly again. They happened to see Qiao chatting with his classmates. Zhang Zi and Shang immediately followed to eavesdrop. After Qiao left, the two hurriedly ran to ask about the festival. From a classmate, they found out that everyone would be dressing up to attend the ball. Shang suggested that they could pretend to be on their way to the festival. That evening, the two took out their small pocket money to buy clothes for the ball, but the total was only 88 yuan, which was not enough to buy anything. While the two were still confused, they discovered a cheap clothing stall next door. So, the two decided to buy it there. After changing their costumes, Zhang Zi and Shang dressed up as faceless characters from a Japanese anime. At the festival, they saw Ouyang and the others coming out. The two wanted to hide their identities to create a surprise, but when they jumped out excitedly, their friends looked at them strangely and left, leaving them both extremely embarrassed. After returning home, Zhang Zi hid behind the curtain. No matter what her friends said, she refused to come out, so Ouyang promised that he would take them camping on New Year's Day. Only then did Zhang Zi stick her head out, causing everyone to burst into laughter. However, a delicious meal could not heal the embarrassment. Shang then asked Zhang Zi to go out for a hamburger to comfort her broken heart. He also promised that he would help her make a wish come true. After thinking about it, Zhang Zi realized that she really needed his help. She wanted him to take a picture of her. Zhang Zi wanted a picture of Haonan, who was handsome with an ideal height and had a temperament that made her infatuated. Haonan was a new transfer student to the school. He was not only good at basketball, but also very handsome, so Haonan quickly attracted a lot of fans. Thanks to his talent and appearance, Haonan became the captain of the basketball team as soon as he entered school. The girls in the class often discussed the list of male gods on campus, and Haonan always ranked first. Zui and Shang ranked second and third respectively. However, they all thought that there was no one in their class who was really handsome. Of course, the girls in other classes also thought the same, so quite a few girls from other classes came to look at Zui and Shang. Soon after, Shang took a photo of Haonan and asked each person whether he was more handsome or Haonan. When he asked his grandfather, he thought seriously and chose carefully, and finally gave Shang a compliment. However, his grandfather also understood that this ranking was just a ranking in the school. Finally, Shang brought the photo to ask Xiao, but before he could hear Xiao's answer, he saw Zhang Zi Z coming over. He immediately did not let Zheng Z see the photo because he did not want her to have the chance to seduce Haonan. Xiang even took the photo and ran away. At this time, Zheng Z angrily scolded him while Xiang complained about his dissatisfaction. He was most dissatisfied with the school's male god ranking. Therefore, in order to regain his place in the hearts of the girls, he decided to sign up for the school's basketball team. Meanwhile, Xiao had recently become unusual. He rarely went out with his friends after school, rarely went to the store, and every time he returned home, his arms and legs were covered with inexplicable injuries. Xiao told this to her close friends, and they found out that Xiao was with Haonan every day after school. The friends immediately thought that Xiao was being bullied by Haonan, so they decided to block Haonan at the basketball court to use violence to fight violence. The four of them enthusiastically went to the basketball court. They saw Haonan with Xiao and thought he was bullying his friend, so they rushed to stop him. But when they got closer, they discovered the truth. It turned out that Haonan was massaging Xiao. It turned out that Xiao had secretly joined the basketball team, and he wanted to change from a reserve to a regular player. Xiao practiced with Haonan every day. The injuries on his body were not caused by bullying, but by himself during practice. Because of the misunderstanding, Xiao and Zheng bought some snacks to apologize to Haonan that evening. The next day, Zheng Zi excitedly carried a bag of snacks to find Haonan. When Xiang saw this scene, he became even angrier, but he thought that it was not a big deal, because Haonan's image would soon collapse. The school's basketball team had just recruited a new group of players. That afternoon, Haonan had to compete with Lon, who was famous in the school. No one expected that Lon, who had been praised for many years, would lose to Haonan. Liang was quickly tamed. Seeing Zheng Zi liking Haonan more and more, Xiang became even more determined to defeat him. He believed that to win, one had to know oneself and one's enemy. So that evening, Xiang and Zui asked Xiao about Haonan's playing habits so they could adjust their strategies and gain an advantage in the competition. Xiao suggested that if they wanted to win, it would be best for the two of them to work together on the same team, or to use a double attack tactic. Hearing this, Xiang and Zui agreed and began their secret training. The team selection period was approaching. Zui and Xiang joined the team and enthusiastically started practicing. However, after a while, the training did not bring any results. Xiang felt that the reason was because they did not really understand each other as soulmates. Knowing that Zui loved puzzle games, he brought a puzzle game and swore that he could definitely complete it. However, the result disappointed Xiang. Despite his best efforts, he still could not distinguish the two identical puzzle pieces. Too heartbroken, Xiang told Zui that he needed to learn again. To do that, Xiang used his account to play Zui's favorite game, but ended up losing 10 games in a row. After that defeat, the two decided to go straight to the basketball court to practice. However, what Xiang did not expect was that when he just left the court to go buy water, Haonan took the initiative to invite Zui to join his team. Xiang saw this and immediately rushed over to stop him. He swore that he would never let Haonan take advantage of Zui. From then on, in order to prevent Haonan from stealing his friend, Xiang always stayed by Zui's side. Even when he accidentally ran into Haonan in the hallway, he deliberately showed his close friendship. Soon, the day of the basketball game arrived. The two sides coordinated well, calling out continuously. The surrounding students enthusiastically cheered for Xiang, while Zheng Zi cheered for Haonan alone. Gradually, Xiang's team narrowed the gap in points. At this time, Haonan's scumbag nature began to show. He constantly had tricks up his sleeve. Zheng Zi suddenly realized, wasn't that a foul? Only then did she see Haonan's true face. Zheng Zi couldn't help but tell her classmates about what she had witnessed. As the game was about to end, Xiang and his teammates stubbornly maintained the score. However, unexpectedly, Haonan, out of impatience, committed a foul and pushed Xiang to the ground. Zheng Zi angrily rushed onto the basketball court to demand justice for Xiang. It was at that moment that Haonan's scumbag face was completely revealed. After this incident, Haonan was not only expelled from the basketball team, but even his name disappeared from the school rankings. Thanks to this, Xiang and Zui took first and second place respectively, a very well-deserved result. The girls in the class also began to pay attention to them again. However, the joy did not last long. Just a few minutes later, a handsome boy from the next class appeared, immediately attracting all the attention of the girls, leaving both of them helpless again. At the same time, Zheng Zi discovered that Zui had a secret crush on Xiao. She wanted to bond the two, so Zheng Zi often sat next to Xiao and praised Zui. No matter what Zui did, Zheng Zi would deliberately express her pride to get Xiao's attention. Meanwhile, Xiang mistakenly thought that Zheng Zi and Zui were in love. His jealousy almost exploded, forcing him to pull Zheng Zi aside and say that young people should focus on studying, wholeheartedly improving their grades so that they could build their hometown. countdown. But Zheng Zi didn't want to listen to his long words, so he confronted him with his clumsy acting skills. When they returned to the camp, everyone was preparing to celebrate New Year's Eve. Xiao took out fireworks from his bag, wanting to add a little romance to the evening. Zheng Zi was about to play the fairy stick game when she was suddenly called by Shang. He took the initiative to put on her newly bought hat and scarf. Although he was clearly full of concern for Zheng Zi in his heart, he still refused to admit it on the outside. The New Year's countdown gradually ended. The New Year came with cheers, friends hugged each other, and congratulated each other. Everyone made resolutions, hoping that their dreams for the new year would come true. The New Year's Eve party ended with a brilliant fireworks display. That night, Xiao couldn't sleep because of Zheng Zi's snoring, so she put on her coat and went out. As a result, she accidentally met Zui and couldn't sleep either. Zui sent New Year's greetings to Xiao, and at the same time, took out the gift he had prepared for her in advance. On the morning of the first day, Shang saw Zui and Zheng Zi standing close together and questioned them. Zui explained that Zheng Zi's contact lenses were stuck to her eyelashes, so he only helped her take them off. However, Shang still had misconceptions about their relationship, and a feeling of jealousy suddenly arose in his heart. At that moment, Xiao, who was beside him, frankly asked Shang if he liked Zheng Zi. Shang firmly refused. He did not admit his feelings. At this time, Shang hurriedly went online to search for signs of love. The results showed that he had all those signs. From that day on, everything in Shang's eyes turned into Zheng Zi's silhouette. Even when walking on the familiar road to school, he still thought Zheng Zi was cute. In order to create an opportunity for the two of them to be alone at night, Shang specially downloaded a new movie and invited Zheng Zi to watch it together. However, he did not dare to watch a horror movie, so he could only hide behind Zheng Zi. When Zheng Zi was about to complain about Shang's cowardice, the lights in the house suddenly went out, giving the two of them a chance to hug each other tightly. The school exam was coming. In order to improve students' academic performance, the school allowed everyone to freely choose study partners to make up for their weak subjects. Without hesitation, Shang wrote Zheng Zi's name. However, his deskmate secretly changed his name for personal gain, forcing Zheng Zi to study alone. In the end, the teacher had to randomly assign a study partner to her, and it was Gao, the best student in the class. When he saw Zheng Zi and Gao shaking hands, Shang was immediately alert. The school required everyone to choose a study partner, and Zheng Zi got Gao. The two of them made an appointment to go out to study on the weekend. Shang didn't want Zheng Zi and Gao to have a chance to date privately, so the next day he waited downstairs very early, claiming to be Zheng Zi's bodyguard. However, what he didn't expect was that Zheng Zi and Gao were wearing jackets of similar colors. When he saw the two of them wearing the same jacket, Shang felt out of place. Since it was almost lunchtime, Gao suggested going out to eat before class started. To save face, Shang took the two of them to a Thailand restaurant. He wanted to show off in front of them, so he awkwardly ordered a few dishes. Unexpectedly, the waiter at the Thailand restaurant didn't know how to speak Thai. Zheng Zi wondered when Shang had learned Thai, when in fact he had only studied Russian in the library. When he saw Zheng Zi and Gao studying together attentively, Shang felt jealous again. Even from time to time, he had to find a way to confirm his existence. At that moment, a group of girls at the opposite table started to go crazy because someone was attracting their attention. Shang quickly took out a piece of paper with his phone number on it, preparing to give it out. However, he didn't expect that those girls would ask for Gao's phone number. This made Shang extremely embarrassed. On the way home, Zheng Zi praised her wonderful study partner. She thought Gao was handsome, gentle, and very patient. Hearing those words, Shang could only angrily retort, his jealousy becoming more obvious. But when Shang turned around, he saw Zheng Zi sleeping by the window. Seeing her accidentally hit her head on the glass, Shang couldn't bear it and sat in the back seat. At the same time, he put his hand on Zheng Zi's head to prevent her from hitting the glass. Meanwhile, Zui finally confessed her love to Xiao. That day, the two of them represented the school in an interview. As soon as the interview ended, the director from the studio next door rushed over. Their program was about to start, but the two guests who had made an appointment couldn't arrive on time. Therefore, Zui and Xiao were immediately pulled over to participate instead. Surprisingly, the show next door was a performance about love. Both of them were a little confused. However, in order not to embarrass the director, they had to accept. No one expected that the fake couple they played would understand each other better than a real couple. Together, they overcame all 5 levels of challenges and 6 final obstacles. Then, they were invited to the main stage, facing the awkwardness of having to pretend to be a married couple. In the climax, Zui revealed his true feelings in front of a large audience. He said that Xiao had given him a new direction, a completely different path in life, because her dream was as vast as the mountains, the seas, and the elegant elegant universe. He did not want her to go through that journey alone. Zui frankly said that he liked Xiao. In the end, Xiao still thought that this confession was just part of the program's effect. However, she still felt happy to have the opportunity to confess like this. Ever since he formed a study group with Gao, Zhengzi often went out to study with him. Xiang always secretly followed, sometimes pretending to casually ask about Zhengzi's whereabouts. Today, he knew that she went to study with Gao in the evening, but it was late at night and she still hadn't come back. Xiang was so worried that he waited by the roadside, holding an umbrella in his hand. He kept taking out his phone to call, but got no response. Xiang didn't know how long he had waited, only that Zhengzi finally appeared. She was wearing a yellow raincoat and went into the house. He was both happy and angry. Xiang couldn't help but scold Zhengzi, saying that it was dangerous for a girl to go out so late. Although he didn't dare to admit it, Xiang ran out into the street because he was worried about her. His heart was still full of warmth, and he even took out a carton of cold milk and gave it to Zhengzi. The new year was approaching. The group went to the temple to have their fortune told. The monk told Zhengzi that her close relatives would take her to a special place to start the new year. After hearing this, Zhengzi was extremely happy and determined that that special place would definitely be a New Year's trip. Unexpectedly, as soon as she got home, Zhengzi heard her parents talking about going on a trip somewhere. In fact, the names of the places her parents mentioned were very well developed, so Zhengzi was even more confident in the idea of going on a trip. In the next few days, she tried to show her filial piety to her parents in many different ways. Sometimes she cooked extra side dishes. Sometimes she gave her mother a massage. Zhengzi's mother saw that her daughter was so understanding, so she happily took out 50 yuan to reward Zhengzi. On this occasion, Zhengzi asked her mother about the two places Guilin and Changmei. Her mother just smiled and said that this year they would go see Changmei. Meanwhile, Xiang was not so lucky. Relatives came to visit, and he was forced to play with his cousin. His cousin asked to use Xiang's clothes to make doll clothes, even taking his brother's clothes to fix. On a whim, the cousin even cut Xiang's hair. After that, the two watched cartoons together. Suddenly, the younger sister raised her hand and pinched Xiang's arm hard. Before he could say anything, the cousin burst into tears and ran to find her mother. She also accused Xiang of bullying her. As a result, the grandfather reprimanded Xiang. Because he was wronged, he showed everyone where his arm was pinched. However, everyone defended the girl, saying that she was still young and didn't know anything. Before the child left, Xiang could only suppress his anger. He took out a series of study materials as a gift and gave them to his cousin. Xiang couldn't hide his pride at getting revenge on his cousin. At this time, Zhengzi asked Xiang to teach her Thai. A few days ago, she overheard her parents saying that they wanted to take her on a trip to Chiang Mai during the Lunar New Year, so she thought that learning a little Thai would be convenient for communication. When it was time to learn, one person dared to teach, the other dared to learn. After listening to the instructions, Zhengzi practiced pronouncing Thai, and she felt that it really had many interesting nuances. However, the next day, she could no longer laugh at all, because that day, a strange aunt came to the house, named Chiang Mai. Only then did Zhengzi understand. The Chiang Mai travel that her parents talked about was not a place name, but simply a person's name. It turned out that the mother of her aunt had been pregnant in Chiang Mai, so she named her daughter Chiang Mai. Even the names of her family members were very simple. The older brother was named Lynn, and their younger brothers and sisters also had simple names. The dream of traveling to Chiang Mai was shattered, but Zhengzi was not too sad. That night was New Year's Eve. However, Zhengzi's father had to work the night shift and could only come home after midnight, so the New Year's Eve dinner without his father always made Zhengzi feel incomplete. She immediately suggested to her mother that they bring the New Year's Eve dinner to her father's company together. She suddenly thought that perhaps this was the special place that the monk had mentioned. Although Zhengzi was not allowed to go to Chiang Mai, the whole family still had a neat reunion dinner, and that was the most important thing. After many years of working away from home, Xiang's father suddenly returned. This made Xiang worried because he did not know how to get along with his father. The two met in an awkward and embarrassing atmosphere. In fact, Xiang's father himself did not know how to get close to his son. In order to quickly shorten the distance between the two, he learned from what the scholars on TV had said about strict education methods. Although he was very satisfied with his son's exam results, when facing Xiang, he still maintained a strict attitude. He even ignored the subjects that Xiang did well in, only choosing the worst subject, English, to make it a big problem. After a while of being taught, Xiang was forced to conduct an introspection, and he had to write a self-criticism and submit it to him. Although strict, Xiang's father's concern was sincere. Seeing that his son had lost a lot of weight, he took the initiative to go out and buy a lot of fruit to nourish nourish his son. On the way home, Xiang's father heard from his neighbor, Uncle Wang, that Xiang was about to have an important basketball game. It would be a great source of encouragement if his parents came to cheer him on. However, Xiang did not inform his father. This made him feel disappointed and sad. In contrast to Xiang's situation, Zheng Zi had a very close relationship with Zheng Zi's father. Mr. Huang often took his daughter out to play, and she always happily danced around her father. By chance, they met Xiang's father. After greeting each other, Xiang's father saw the harmonious bond between Zheng Zi and Zheng Zi's father. He thought that any daughter could be so intimate with her father. But when he returned home, he saw Xiang chatting and laughing freely with Uncle Wang. Only then did he realize the big problem in the relationship between him and his son. Father Tan gradually learned from Zheng Zi how to reduce the distance between father and son. The girl pointed out that the reason was because he was too strict. Whether he was 7 or 17, Xiang was still just a child who always craved his father's attention. If he wanted to enter his son's heart, he had to learn to pay attention to and understand Xiang's feelings, and then help him create more joy. Just do what he could to help Xiang solve his difficulties, and he would gradually gain his son's trust. Thanks to those suggestions, Xiang's father understood his son more and more. He also knew that the person Xiang loved the most was Zheng Zi. Seeing his son silently caring for Zheng Zi, he felt relieved and happier. Even during dinner, Xiang was willing to take the only chicken thighs to give to Zheng Zi. All of this was seen by Xiang's father. During the basketball game, cheers echoed throughout the stands. The surrounding people kept shouting, "Go, Xiang! Xiang, go!" However, those shouts were scattered and lacked strength. Only Xiang's father kept a serious face. He did not join in cheering for his son at all. Meanwhile, the other parents of Data School cheered wholeheartedly, turning themselves into a rowdy cheering squad on the side of the court. The bustling atmosphere made Xiang's father's silence even more prominent. At home, when cleaning his son's room, he accidentally discovered a box full of awards that Xiang had won. On each award, there were also childish messages, in which Xiang wrote to his father with innocence and longing for affection. Back on the field, facing a professionally trained school team, Xiang and his teammates were defeated one after another, the score gap widening. Just when Xiang felt that he could not reverse the situation, his father suddenly appeared with a megaphone in his hand. He cheered loudly, proudly shouting that his son was the team's main man, and called on everyone to cheer for Xiang. That appearance made Xiang full of life. He put in double his strength to fight. Thanks to that, Xiang won the important match. In the evening, Xiang's father took out his son's childhood photo album to look at together. Since the mother passed away, he had hidden this album and only found it by chance today when he was cleaning the house. He flipped through each page and recounted Xiang's childhood stories, and at the same time expressed his regret for not growing up with his son over the years. He also promised himself that from now on, he would try to live happily with his son. Whether happy or sad, they would share it together. From then on, the animosity between them gradually disappeared. This was also the first time Xiang sat down with his son to watch a full basketball game, trying to understand and integrate into Xiang's interests. In another development, Mr. Lin felt happy to know that his son had earned a lot of money in America and was preparing to take Mr. Lin there to live with him. However, he also felt very attached to the land he had been attached to for 15 years, along with his close neighbors, so he used his phone to record memories with each person and carefully prepared gifts for them. The children in the neighborhood also did not want to let Mr. Lin leave. They decided, before he went to America, to record the most precious memories and put them into a special gift. Each person wrote a good wish to send to him. They told him that when he went to America, he had to take care of his health and spend money freely without being stingy. No matter how big or small the illness, he needed to have regular health checkups and take medicine on time, especially medicine to treat myocardial infarction. They also advised him to learn more English so that he could communicate more easily, and to bring a card with his phone number and address in English written by Peng. They emphasized that nothing was more important than his health and safety. If he felt uncomfortable in the US, he could always return, because the entire Shuday area was waiting for him. Finally, everyone agreed to take him to the photo studio, where he and Mrs. Lin had taken their wedding photos. They planned to let him wear his old school uniform and take a large photo as a gift filled with memories and nostalgia. On Mr. Lin's side, after receiving news from his son that he could not take his father abroad immediately, he temporarily moved to his sister's house for a few days. His son promised to quickly arrange to take him. However, not long after, his sister called with bad news. No one expected that the next time they had waited to meet would no longer happen. Mr. Lin suddenly had a heart attack. The entire population of Greater Shuday immediately dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. His daughter also hurried back. However, However, the doctors could only inform the family that they had tried their best. Departures always come unexpectedly, and the words of farewell that were not yet spoken were forever lost. His son arrived late, kneeling before his father's portrait for a long time without getting up. He choked up and apologized for being late. His short sentence filled with countless regrets, because no one was sure that tomorrow would be long, and no one dared to confirm that they would meet again. In the middle of the mountains and forests, today everyone was still gathered. Therefore, everyone needed to cherish the present, lived each moment to the fullest. 2 months before the Beijing Olympics, the children all wanted to participate in the opening ceremony. However, Zhang Zi was too frugal for her mother, and Xiao always had an inferiority complex because of his poor academic performance. So Shuday's 5 children split into 2 small groups. Shang took on the responsibility of earning money to help Zhang Zi participate, while Zui and Xiao took on tutoring for Qiao. However, Xiao did not expect too much, because since Qiao was young, he had countless tutors, but no one had been able to help him improve his grades. On the contrary, Zui was extremely ambitious. He believed that if he worked with Xiao, Qiao would definitely achieve good results. However, reality is often harsh. In order to solve Qiao's learning problem, the 3 of them decided to go to a used bookstore to buy materials. Unexpectedly, some books were priced at 120 yuan. Hearing this, Qiao immediately wanted to pull his friends away. Originally, they didn't have the money to watch the Olympics, and now even books were so expensive, it was hard to manage. While the 3 were hesitating whether to buy them or not, they suddenly saw a girl bargaining with the shop owner. The way she spoke was both decisive and skillful. Seeing this scene, Qiao turned to Xiao, signaling that she should try bargaining too. At first, Xiao refused, but after the pleading of both friends, she stepped forward and imitated the bargaining style of the girl just now. Xiao said that she really liked the books in the store. Finally, after some persistence, she persuaded the owner to lower the price from 120 yuan to 50 yuan. After paying with a face that looked like she had lost all hope, Xiao walked out of the bookstore. Standing behind, Xiao only felt a shiver at the scene just now, but Zui found her very cute. In order to quickly help Zhang Zi collect enough money to buy tickets to the Beijing Olympics, Shang searched her room clean. Things like comics, dolls, and valuables were all taken away by him, promising to return them intact later. So Zhang Zi reluctantly agreed to leave all the furniture in the house to Shang. The next day, Shang and Zhang Zi brought the items to the most crowded night market. Then, the 2 opened a stall selling bracelets, hoping to let her experience the feeling of getting rich in a flash. However, after half a day of shouting until their voices were hoarse, the stall still had no one coming to buy. Zhang Zi began to feel disappointed with Shang's stall. She even angrily threatened that it was okay if she didn't make any money, but since she had invested all her belongings in it, if Shang couldn't get the money back, she would make him pay with his life. At this moment, an elderly man appeared. Right from the start, he had spent 30 yuan to buy hoops. Both of them were immediately happy, thinking that they had finally started making money. However, this joy didn't last long. The man was actually a hoop king. Not only did he hit the target, but even when he threw randomly with his eyes closed, he was still incredibly accurate. In just a moment, all of their belongings were taken away by him. Zhang Zi angrily scolded Shang, and he didn't know what to do. Suddenly, his eyes caught sight of someone playing the guitar nearby, and a new idea flashed through his mind. Zhang Zi immediately took a small bag and happily collected the audience's tips, while Shang enthusiastically performed. Thanks to that, they earned quite a lot of money in one night. Returning home, Zhang Zi happily counted the money they had just earned. She also didn't forget to brag to her mother, who was famous for being frugal. Ever since Shang performed busking on the street and earned money for her, Zhang Zi's attitude towards him had completely changed. She became enthusiastic, from pouring tea, massaging him, to just feeding him. That night, they continued to set up a busking stall. From the very first tunes, the 2 had already attracted a crowd of spectators. Zhang Zi happily held a small bag to collect tips. It seemed like they had earned quite a bit of money tonight. After the performance and the break, she sat down excitedly to count the tips they had just collected, her face beaming with joy. If things continued to go well, not only would the group of friends be able to attend the Olympic opening ceremony, but they would also be able to buy a few more tickets to the games. However, just as everyone was complacent about their success, the city manager suddenly came to check. Shang quickly pulled Zhang Zi to escape, and the manager chased closely behind. In order to avoid them, Zhang Zi and Shang rushed into a small alley, hid behind a cabinet, and peeked out. They had saved enough money to buy tickets, but unexpectedly, they were sold out. Everyone was extremely disappointed, and their spirits immediately dropped. However, they quickly found a new opportunity. A big event was being held at the shopping mall, and the final winner would get a free trip to Beijing. Beijing to watch the Olympics. The group of friends immediately signed up to participate. The first round was a quiz about Olympic knowledge, and they were lucky to pass. The second round was a talent show. After careful discussion, the group decided to let Xiao show off his special talent and become the king of big stomachs. Under the strict supervision of his friends, Xiao fasted for 2 days. In the time it took him to sing a song, he ate 10 hamburgers and successfully passed the second round. Now, all that's left is the final match. As long as they win, the whole group will have a chance to go to Beijing to watch the Olympics together. Meanwhile, Zhang Zi's mother, after finishing the parent-teacher conference, returned home and harshly criticized her daughter. She blamed why the other children were doing well in their studies, but her daughter was always negligent. She was also frustrated that Zhang Zi had a mind full of ideas, but she didn't put any effort into her studies. In order to improve her daughter's academic results, Zhang Zi's mother decided to enroll her in the best extracurricular class. No matter how expensive the tuition was, she still gritted her teeth and paid. When she saw her daughter about to enter the extra class, Zhang Zi's mother even bought her a brand new pair of sneakers. However, Zhang Zi, who was a poor student, felt confused as soon as she entered the class. At that time, the neighborhood needed electrical maintenance, so the class lost power for an hour, and the end of school was also delayed by an hour. Zhang Zi originally planned to stay for extra classes, but met a rich classmate who invited her to drink milk tea. The classmate's mother had given her too much pocket money, so she wanted to invite her friend along. Zhang Zi couldn't resist the temptation, so she quickly followed her friend out of the classroom. On the way back, the two happened to pass by a hair salon. The rich girl suddenly wanted to go in and get her hair done, but she felt that it was too lonely to go alone, so she pulled Zhang Zi along. Just as Zhang Zi was about to get her hair done, Zhang Zi's mother suddenly passed by and saw her. When she looked at mother's murderous eyes, Zhang Zi felt like she was being torn in two. She was extremely angry. Even though Zhang Zi tried to coax her to please her, her mother's face remained cold. Zhang Zi's mother sternly replied that geniuses were rare in this world, so ordinary people had to work hard on their own. She emphasized that only when people had a proper education, entered a good university, and then found a stable job could they live a comfortable life. She didn't want her daughter to have a future like her father, who worked hard all his life and only earned a few thousand yuan a month. Zhang Zi's mother had a hard time enrolling Zhang Zi in an extra class, but on the first day of school, her daughter skipped school to get her hair done. Zhang Zi wanted to explain that she didn't skip school just to get her hair done, but her mother wouldn't listen at all. She was so heartbroken that tears filled her eyes. Zhang Zi immediately called Shang to tell her story. Although she didn't know what Zhang Zi was upset about, Shang still tried to comfort her very kindly, even telling her jokes to cheer her up. Zhang Zi was angry at the time because her parents were about to leave her behind to go to Thailand to attend her aunt's wedding in Chiang Mai. They had also secretly completed their passports. Zhang Zi really didn't know what to say because she was clearly the one who spoke the most Thai in the family, yet they had left her alone at home. Her father quickly coaxed her and promised that he would definitely take his daughter out next time. Hearing this, Zhang Zi could only reluctantly agree to stay home. Immediately after, her parents happily pulled their suitcases, happily preparing to enjoy their own world. As soon as they left the house, Zhang Zi immediately began to enjoy herself. She wore her mother's high heels, ate ice cream, and danced to celebrate. Shang's grandmother was worried about Zhang Zi being home alone, so she asked her grandchild to take care of Zhang Zi. Shang said that he was reluctant to do this, but his body reacted the opposite. In fact, he was very happy inside. Shang brought blankets and pillows and ran to Zhang Zi's house. When he arrived, Zhang Zi asked in surprise what he was doing here. Shang replied that he was here to sleep together. A push and shove broke out, causing the two to fall on top of each other. The atmosphere between the two became awkward, and they remained in that position until their other friends arrived before separating. The friends who had just entered were surprised by the scene before their eyes. The relationship between the group of friends who had grown up together since childhood was really good. When they found out that Zhang Zi was home alone, they were worried about her safety, so they all came to keep her company. To kill time, the group of friends decided to play a game of holding back laughter. According to the rules, the loser would have to fulfill a wish of the winner. The game began, and Zhang Zi was the first to attack. She put her foot on her nose and breathed, but the result was that she was the one who couldn't hold back her laughter, becoming the first player to be eliminated. Next was Qiao and Shang's turn to attack. However, Qiao was the one who was most likely to be eliminated. Xiao looked at him with a mischievous smile, pulled his leg back, and just scratched him gently, making him laugh and become the loser. In the end, there were only 2 players left. Xiao first made a face to make Zui laugh, but Zui did not react. No one expected that Zui would be defeated by Xiao's simple, sweet gesture. In the middle of the night, when everyone was fast asleep, Shang suddenly got up to go to the bathroom. He found Zheng Zi vomiting in the bathroom. When Zheng Zi woke up later, she found herself in the hospital. Zheng Zi was still in a daze. She didn't know why she was brought here. Only then did Xiao tell her that last night she had a fever and fainted. It was Shang who ran 3 kilometers in the cold to take her to the hospital. While everyone was talking, Shang had just returned. Zheng Zi saw him limping into the room. Although his words were a bit harsh, they warmed her heart. Zheng Zi thought that there were many precious moments in life. Because Shang had held her hand, he had hugged her, and it was also Shang who had carried her on his back, running on the cold street. Zheng Zi had countless days with Shang. Finally, the college entrance exam was over. Friends gathered to celebrate. Xiao took out the wish list she won in the competition. She sneered and reminded that during this summer vacation, the losers would have to help her fulfill a dream. Once again, the important exam came. They buried themselves in studying. Meanwhile, the homeroom teacher went to Zheng Zi's mother. He suggested Zheng Zi to participate in the literary creation competition. The teacher also affirmed that she would definitely get good results. Hearing this news, Shang immediately felt danger. The game in his hand suddenly lost its appeal. Shang no longer had the mind for the game. He hurriedly ran to Zheng Zi's house. In front of Zheng Zi's mother, Shang began to defend himself. He said that he wanted to accompany Zheng Zi to school because Shang was afraid that if someone had bad intentions towards Zheng Zi, it would be very dangerous. Seeing that Zheng Zi's mother still did not agree, Shang immediately turned to find Zheng Zi's father. His future father-in-law was still more trustworthy. After listening to Shang's analysis, he decided to let him go with Zheng Zi. However, Zheng Zi really could not understand. She was only going out for 2 days to participate in the competition, but her parents insisted on finding a supervisor. Very soon, they met Gao on the bus. As soon as they got on, Gao asked to change seats with Shang, saying that he wanted to discuss the topic of the writing competition with Zheng Zi tomorrow. Shang said that he had a fear of communication, so he did not want to change seats. So Shang was arranged to sit in the last row of the bus, and he had to stare at Zheng Zi from afar, who was whispering to Gao in front. Suddenly Shang had the idea to call Zheng Zi and pretend to be sick. This trick was really effective. When Zheng Zi heard that Shang was sick, he immediately ran over to care. When he saw Zheng Zi so close to him, Shang's face turned red all the way to his ears. Zheng Zi told him to lean on her shoulder to rest. Shang was extremely happy inside, and in order to keep her, he continued to pretend to be sick. Shang knew that Zheng Zi had to go out to compete with Gao, so even if he had to be shameless, Shang still wanted to go with her. However, the hotel near the competition only had 2 empty rooms. There was no other way. There had to be a couple to share. Shang suddenly felt a little embarrassed. A strange thought popped into his head again. If Shang's rival shared a room with Zheng Zi, he wouldn't be able to bear it. So Shang decided to share a room with Gao. Not wanting to sleep with his rival, Shang said he was sick, so Gao had to sleep on the sofa. But as soon as Shang heard that Gao wanted to go find Zheng Zi, Shang became even more uneasy. He thought that even if Zheng Zi had better writing skills, Gao didn't need to communicate so often. As a result, when Gao opened the door, he saw Zheng Zi outside. It turned out that because Shang said he had a fever, she went to buy medicine for him. But Shang was pretending to have a fever, so he couldn't take it. After saying that, Shang immediately jumped onto the bed and prepared to go to sleep. When he heard that Gao wanted to go to Zheng Zi's room to continue discussing tomorrow's competition, Shang couldn't stand it anymore. He immediately jumped off the bed, finding an excuse to go with Gao, because he was afraid of being alone. Then Shang sat on the sofa, playing with his phone while monitoring the 2 of them. However, there were so many mosquitoes in Zheng Zi's room that she couldn't catch them all. Zheng Zi had an idea. She started to act spoiled with Shang. There was a call from the front desk asking for Zheng Zi's ID because she had forgotten it when she opened the room. Shang volunteered to help Zheng Zi in a sweet manner. She begged that if possible, Shang would help them buy dinner. Although he refused, verbally, Shang's actual actions were worthy of full marks. Not only did he generously invite them to dinner, but also worried that Zheng Zi wouldn't have enough to eat. Shang even shared his noodles with her. Seeing Zheng Zi yawning while eating, Shang urged Gao to eat quickly so she could rest early. At night, Shang was worried that if he fell asleep, Gao would come looking for Zheng Zi. So he put his feet on Gao and put his hand on Gao to keep him from disappearing. Gao was very upset by that strange behavior. When questioned, Shang suddenly felt confused. The sudden feeling of crisis made him unable to sleep. There were too many mosquitoes in the hotel. Gao had fallen asleep but could not lie. Still, in order not to affect the match tomorrow, Shang woke up and lit a mosquito candle for Gao to sleep. Zheng Zi was already sleeping peacefully in the room. It turned out that before leaving her room, Shang Shang had secretly lit a mosquito candle, knowing that the enemy of love was about to confess to the girl he loved. That night, Shang was restless and worried and could not sleep. The next day, he took the two to the competition venue and left with a lonely back. Zheng Zi also vaguely sensed that Shang was not well. When the exam was almost over, it suddenly started to rain lightly. Shang went to buy a yellow umbrella for her. He was worried that Zheng Zi would get wet. But when she left the exam room, Shang saw Zheng Zi and Gao sharing an umbrella. They were still laughing and talking happily. Shang felt a little disappointed in his heart. He just quietly bowed his head and followed them. Zheng Zi seemed to sense his unhappiness. She immediately ran out and ran under Shang's umbrella. Zheng Zi then tried to cheer Shang up in her own way. However, the next day, when she returned home, Gao invited Zheng Zi out to prepare to confess to her. Shang knew all this. He was unhappy but hesitated. He did not dare to step out because Shang was afraid of ruining their friendship of more than 15 years. Even when watching his favorite basketball game with his best friend, he was so worried that he lost his soul. Shang found an excuse to return to his room alone because he was sad. Zui beside him recognized this sign. He directly broke Shang's thoughts. Zui saw through everything and encouraged Shang to go after Zheng Zi. Otherwise, Shang would regret it. After coming to his senses, Shang hurried out the door. He caught a taxi and immediately called Zheng Zi. She looked at the call but directly refused. Zheng Zi thought that Shang had nothing good to do when calling. Shang on this side was even more worried when the call was rejected. Unable to wait for a taxi any longer, time was running out. Shang's heart had to rush to prove this feeling. Finally, Shang mustered up all his courage and confessed to Zheng Zi that he liked her. Zheng Zi might feel quite strange because they had been close friends since childhood, arguing, playing, and even fighting for 18 years. Shang himself did not know since when Zheng Zi had become so important. When they were in 11th grade, Shang had seen Zheng Zi going to extra classes with someone else. At that time, he had felt extremely uncomfortable. However, Shang still could not help but stand in the rain, waiting for her to come home from school. At the beginning of last year, when he had seen Zheng Zi and Zui being so close, it was the first and only time he had seen his best friend being so annoying. The last time Zheng Zi was sick, Shang had been extremely worried when he had taken her to the hospital. He had even blamed himself for not taking good care of her. Hearing Shang's confession of love, Zheng Zi couldn't help herself. She hugged him tightly and kissed him before Shang could react. Zheng Zi quickly explained that she was just angry and didn't mean to kiss Shang. After Shang returned home, he immediately ran to find Zui. Shang couldn't hide his joy and grabbed Zui's shoulder to share his joy. Zui immediately became worried and quickly covered Shang's mouth because he was on the phone with Xiao, Zheng Zi's best friend. After hanging up, Xiao quickly came over and questioned Shang, who was kneeling on the bed to confess. Only after asking did Xiao realize that Shang had immediately informed Zui of the dating news. Meanwhile, Zheng Zi had not told her about this. Xiao was faced with the question of whether Zheng Zi still considered her a close friend in her heart. The more Xiao thought about it, the more she wanted to find Zheng Zi to ask him. In order to stop Xiao's actions, Zui hugged her to stop her. But at that moment, Xiao walked in and saw this scene with surprise. He thought that his sister was dating Zui and did not tell him anything. The next morning, Xiao invited Zheng Zi out and revealed the news. To him, Xiao and Zui dating without informing them was a betrayal of their friendship. So Xiao wanted to cooperate with Zheng Zi to fight against them. Zheng Zi felt guilty when she heard this because she was the same. Since dating Zheng Zi, Shang had changed like a different person. Everything related to Zheng Zi reminded him. He didn't even let his family eat the basket of oranges because Shang wanted to save it for Zheng Zi. To celebrate their 3-day date, Shang prepared a surprise for Zheng Zi. He reminded her that at 7 p.m. she arrived on time at the meeting point he had set. When she arrived, Zheng Zi saw the romantic lights and the oranges on the ground. Her facial expression was filled with happiness. Shang confided that he wanted to draw Zheng Zi's expressions on the oranges because he liked all of her expressions. The last time he hastily confessed his feelings, Shang was afraid that he would not leave any good memories for Zheng Zi. So this time, he wanted to confess his feelings to her in a romantic way. Shang knew that the feeling of celebration was very important to her, so he hoped that every day when Zheng Zi was with him, she would always feel happy and joyful. Soon after, the two of them started kissing out of deep affection. But, unexpectedly, they were seen by a group of friends passing by. Xiao was furious when he realized the truth. He finally understood that the people who were secretly dating were Shang and Zheng Zi. In order to make up for the betrayed friendship with Xiao, Shang allowed Xiao to freely choose the items in his room. Finally, Xiao took out Shang's childhood diary from the bookshelf. When seeing this, Shang immediately snatched it from Xiao's hand. But because of the previous commitment, Shang Shang, could only let the group read his diary. Unexpectedly, it contained all kinds of bad words about the members of the group. He wrote that on January 2, 2002, he had 4 close friends, Zhenzi, Xiao, and Qiao. Although they had countless shortcomings, Zhenzi was crazy, Zui was boring, Xiao was fierce, and Qiao was extremely stupid. However, a perfect boy like Shang still lived in harmony with them. He wrote that he was actually a generous, tolerant, and good boy. Reading this, everyone quickly became angry. They beat Shang up together, but the feelings of the 5 people in Shuday remained unchanged. Shang hoped that in the future, everyone could be happy every day, and they would meet beautiful friendships and loves. And Shang believed that the world would not hurt cute people like them. The movie ended here. Thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye and see you again.